A relationship with the right referral partner could be a game changer for any B2B company. So what if you could reverse engineer these relationships at a moment's notice? Start a podcast, invite potential referral partners to be guests on your show, and grow your referral network faster than ever. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We are here today with Jon Ogden. He is the Senior Manager of Content Marketing at Workfront. Jon, how are you doing today?
Great, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all, man. I'm excited to have you, Jon. We're going to be talking today really about open offices, specifically, what science says about open offices. And then we're going to be talking about 6 things that our listeners can actually do about it. And so this is based off of a blog post that you guys wrote. It looks like a little while ago, but it's got some phenomenal content in it. So I'm excited for you to walk through it with our listeners. But before we do that, can you just explain to folks that maybe aren't familiar with Workfront, what are you guys doing over there?
So primarily we help people manage their work, and that can entail a lot of things, but it's basically a way for people to streamline their work processes, communicate more efficiently, and move projects along more effectively. And so that's it in a nutshell.
I love it, man. So Jon, I know we've got a lot of content to cover, so I'd love to just dive right into the topic of, open offices and then what we can do about it. So let's start with what the science says about open offices. Let's start there, and then we'll dive into to the next part.
So one thing to know is that open offices aren't new. It's not some new idea from Silicon Valley. And they've been around pretty much since knowledge work has been around. People gather together in spaces that are large and work together this way. And people have known for hundreds of years that this is not the most effective thing. I mean, there's a UK report from 1856 where it reads, "For intellectual work, separate rooms are necessary so that a person who works with his head may not be interrupted." So this is, nearly 150 years ago that they were, or a little more than 150 years ago that they were talking about this, and they were recognizing, it's not the most effective thing for people to be gathered all together in a room because of interruptions. And the modern academics have studied this really extensively. I dove into the research papers on this into various journals, and I found way more information than I could even put in this blog post. But there's just a lot of information, a lot of studies that have been done around this. So one is a review of more than 100 studies found that the layout consistently led to lower rates of concentration and focus. And from there, you can get more specific. You can this one research from the University of California found that employees in cubicles receive more interruptions than those in private offices. And then one of the more extreme findings, I don't know how much. This seems really extreme to me, but this research group, the Cohen-Brown Management Group, they found that office workers at all levels lose 3 to 5 hours of productive time every day. And they found that 68% of interruptions come from inside the organization.
Wow.
That's 3 to 5 hours every day. That seems like a lot. I don't know if I personally would go that far, but that's what they found.
Wow. If you are in an open office environment, the Cohen-Brown Management Group found that 3 to 5 hours of productivity, not every week, but every day can be lost.
Right.
when you don't have your own office. That does seem a little extreme, but hey, there might be some validity there, depending on how, who they surveyed and kind of the scenario by which they did their study. So clearly, based on, a lot of the different studies, having your own private space to work seems to be a more productive way of working. Is that pretty much what you found by diving into all these different studies?
That is what I found. Also, one interesting thing is that some people, I've heard this argument many times about this topic, they say, well, we need an open office so that people feel more comfortable having conversations and that our team can really collaborate more effectively. That's one of the ideas that people have for open offices. But one other study, the Polytechnic Institute in New York, said they found that people actually have shorter and shallower conversations in open offices because they're always being overheard. And so it's not even necessarily more effective for team building as you're just kind of in the middle of somebody's meeting wherever you are in an open office. You can't really develop strong relationships if you are constantly worried about being overheard.
Interesting. All right. So Jon, if open offices are clearly, less productive, let's talk through these 6 things that our listeners can actually do to be more productive. I'm assuming, are these 6 things, Jon, are they, if you're in an open office environment and you don't necessarily have the power to change that, is this how to kind of overcome the lack of productivity that comes in an open office format, or give us a little bit of context around that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So if you're stuck in an open office or even an office with cubicles, you can still get some of these same downsides. And so the question is well, what do you do? And that's what these 6 suggestions are.
Got it. So the first suggestion is to deliberately socialize. Can you talk to us about this one?
Yeah. So I think that one possible downside of being in a private office, or one might think this is a downside, is that you could just get stuck all day. And so part of the reason that it's so important to socialize is so that you can have long periods of focus. So if you can be more deliberate about both things, then you will be a more productive worker. And really socializing is critical because it does strongly correlate with good emotional health. And there are many studies about this that show that when people are lonely, they're less productive, they're not as happy. And so it might seem counterintuitive to say that if you're in an open office, then you should deliberately socialize. But I think it really is an important step, is to say, I'm going to reach out to my coworkers for certain times during the day so that at other times I can be 100% focused.
Got it. So deliberately socializing is the first thing we can do to combat the lack of productivity. The second one that you talk about in this post, Jon, is to practice time blocking. This is actually something one of our former B2B growth guests talked about, actually putting things into your calendar instead of having a to-do list. Is time blocking in the way that you're talking about it similar to that framework of, instead of having to-do lists, actually block, putting it inside of your iCal or whatever calendar tool you use? Is that where you're going with this one?
That's right. And I'll just say that Workfront is, we're producing a product that will put that into your calendar so that you can schedule meetings, and then right alongside those meetings, you can schedule the exact tasks that you should be working on according to the priority that's in the work management system. And so the purpose here is that, you can get overwhelmed with meetings, right? If that's what your whole day is scheduled around is meetings, then you might find none of those meetings are really my primary goal, my one goal that I should be focused on. None of them are. And so if you don't deliberately carve out time to focus on what is your primary goal, chances are it might not happen. And so that's what time blocking is schedule your work day.
Love it. I know that the one thing that I struggle with after having that interview, I guess it was a couple years ago now, I started putting things in my calendar. The problem that I run into is that when I know that I'm the only one, it's a, I've got a schedule of an hour and a half on my calendar to work on this thing, but I know that there's not somebody else in the meeting that's going to be joining, or it's just me. It just becomes really easy to push that aside. But even in that, even moving it to the next day or moving it into another slot in my calendar, it's still going to get done eventually. Do you have any thoughts, Jon, around how we can aside from just being more disciplined, which I could probably use in a lot of areas of my life, to keep from bumping those things like just further and further down your calendar?
One advantage to time blocking and to scheduling it out early is that people can't schedule meetings over the time. As long as you say like, no, I'm busy. They just look at your calendar and you're like, they see like, oh, from 3 to 4, you're busy with something, so I can't schedule the meeting then. So maybe there's an element that's inconsiderate to your coworkers when you do that. But if you really are not doing your primary goal, then like you're just simply put, you're not being as productive as you need to be. And so like by planning ahead early, at least, and putting that in your calendar, at least it can prevent meetings from overrunning everything else. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if I have the solution for sitting down and doing it once the time hits.
If you do ever figure that out, John, I think you've got a best-selling book on your hands. This third one that we're going to talk about, John, implement a work management system. This is obviously where you guys come in. Talk to us about this one.
I've been really impressed with how much Workfront has helped me focus, because unlike a chat app where you are just kind of, the conversations are fractured, they're not in context, and a work management system helps you see what your most important task is and then put that in order so that you can focus on that. And then once you say, okay, I'm on this task right now, then you can kind of close out everything else, get that one off the list, and move systematically through to the next one. And it adds a level of transparency where everybody else can see like, oh, this is what my coworker is working on, so I shouldn't interrupt them with this thing that's like 18th on their list, you know? Or if they do, it's put in its proper place, 18th rather than first. It's not the tyranny of the urgent.
Got it. And so with Workfront, and this is a product that I haven't used yet, as opposed to just being able to kind of fire up Google Calendar and be able to look at your team's calendar to see what's there. I'd love to hear a little bit like more of the functionality that comes inside of Workfront that somebody could see benefit from instead of just like pulling up, Google Calendar and looking there. Can you elaborate on a bit more of the functionality that the tool offers?
Yeah, so I can speak for myself as content marketing. Like there are templates that we use that schedule out, let's say a blog post, and they schedule out like concept, first draft, review, creative images, copy edit, etc. And you can just copy that template and do it for the month, and then you have your calendar all scheduled out, and each of those tasks and assignments can also be shared with coworkers so that everybody has insight into what everybody else is working on, and then can collaborate more effectively to get the work done.
Love it. Awesome, man. So John, this fourth one that we're going to talk about to overcome kind of the problem of lack of productivity is to use sound masking. Talk to us about this one.
So it's basically white noise or pink noise. And if you're in an open office environment and you have white noise or pink noise, you will hear other people talking, but you won't be able to hear as well what they're saying. And often it's the content of what people are saying. You hear your coworkers start telling a story of something that happened to them last night, and your attention just immediately pulled away to listening to that story. So with white noise or pink noise in the background, you're better able to focus for longer periods of time. And so it's almost like ambient sound, background noise that can kind of cut through so you can have clarity.
Got it. Okay. So are there any particular apps or anything that you've found that are useful for this?
Yeah. So there is one ambient sound. It's called asoftmurmur.com.
Okay.
It has birdsong, fire, fireplace, wind, ocean. I mean, you can set it all to your preferences, and it can help cut out the background chatter.
Got it. All right, John, this fifth one, you say in here, get inventive and ask for change. Talk to us about this one.
Yeah, so this one might be hard, but For instance, I had a friend who is an executive at a local company who told me that for him, he would leave the office and drive to a library that was about 5 blocks away and work there for 3 hours. So that's a bit of inventiveness where you say, I'm going to be more productive than I would be at work, but I'm going to carve out this time to do something different than the typical office worker. Another practice is pushing for remote work occasionally to say, I really need to focus, and I can actually focus more effectively at home. So there are ways to kind of push the envelope a bit and do something different than the typical 9 to 5, sit in your chair type approach.
Totally. I'm trying to talk my wife into letting me buy a Tesla for this reason, because of that self-driving functionality and with the use case of, but I can be so much more productive if I don't have to actually drive a car. I can just sit back and get all this work done. So far, it has not been an effective strategy, but I'm going to keep working on it. This last one that we are going to talk about, Jon, is embrace flex work. Talk to us about this one.
So this is a little bit the same in terms of embracing the ability to do remote work. And I think that another element here is that you have to realize that different types of work require different levels of focus. So for most knowledge workers, it almost certainly means that you have to focus for long periods of time. But there might be certain tasks that you have to do where an open office is totally fine. I mean, you just have routine tasks, and you could say, I could crunch through 3 hours of these routine tasks, check an email and stuff, et cetera, with the interruptions. But being aware that when time comes to focus, you really do have to change your approach. And so the idea of flex work is that you can say, depending on the task, open office might work, or private office might be better.
Got it. Awesome. Jon, this has been fantastic. If there's somebody listening to this, they want to stay connected with you, they want to learn more about Workfront, what's the best way for them to go about doing both of those things?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Jon Ogden, and workfront.com. We just completely revamped our website. It's looking great. It runs fast. There's a lot of great information there. So please check it out. Yeah.
Love it. Awesome, Jon. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been fantastic. And I'm excited to see this thing go live.
Thank you.
There are lots of ways to build a community, and we've chosen to build the B2B growth community through this podcast. But because of the way podcasts work, it's really hard to engage with our listeners. And without engagement, it's tough to build a great community. So here's what we've decided to do. We're organizing small dinners across the country with our listeners and guests. No sales pitches, no agenda, just great conversations with like-minded people. We'll talk business, we'll talk family, we'll talk goals and dreams. We'll build friendships. So if you'd like to be a part of a B2B growth dinner in a city near you, go to b2bgrowthdinners.com. That's b2bgrowthdinners.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.